Okay, yes, so Fanny just mentioned that this coming Thursday is Yotes Kislev, which is the 19th day of the month of Kislev, and it's a special holiday. It's called a Yontif for Chassidus. It's called the Rosh Hashana, the New Year of Chassidus. Why do we celebrate? In the year 1798, the Alter Rebbe, which is the first Chabad Rebbe, Reb Shneir Zalman of Liadi, the one who wrote the Tanya, the book of Tanya, which is a fundamental book that teaches us all about who we are, what we are, why we act the way we do, what motivates us, what spurs us into action, what is the thing that really pushes us. It really explores the psyche of the human being, spiritually, emotionally, physically. So he wrote the Tanya, and he was imprisoned in Russia, in Tsarist Russia. He was accused of helping, going against the Tsar, and as a result, he was put into prison for 53 days. He was released on this day, the 19th of Kislev, when he was exonerated. And there's many stories about what happened when he was in prison. One in particular that I like is when he was in prison, he was interrogated by an official who was quite well versed in the Torah and the Bible. And this man asks him, he says, "Rabbi, I need to ask you a question. It says in the beginning, in Genesis, in Bereshit, God comes to Adam and he says, 'Where are you?'" Right? God is calling him. God is kind of making conversation with him in order to bring him out. And before he tells him, "Why did you eat from the tree?" he's telling him, "Where are you?" And he says, why is God calling him? Doesn't God know where he is? And so the Rebbe gave the explanation that God was just trying to converse with him. As Rashi says, he says, "Yeah, I've heard that, but I want to hear your personal take on it. What do you really feel about it?" So the Alter Rebbe says, "Tell me, do you believe in the eternity of the Torah and the truth of the Torah and the truth of the Bible, and that this is a book of God, this is a holy book of God?" And he says, "Yes, I do." He says, "Well, what the Torah is telling us is that God calls out to every person, and he says to the person, whether the person is," and he named the age that this government official was at that point in time. He says, "When a person is so and so many years old, God says to him, God calls out to him and says to him, 'Ayeka, where are you? What are you doing in life? Where are you focusing your energies? Where are you in terms of your purpose in this world, in terms of where you are?' God calls out to each and every one of us, 'Ayeka, where are you? What are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your talents? What are you doing with your capabilities? How are you using them in a godly way?'" And obviously this official was extremely, he realized that this man was a godly man. He knew exactly what he was saying, and he really touched his heart. But this is really a lesson for each and every one of us. Where are we? Where are we in what we're doing? And God is often calling out to us, where are you? Where should we be at this point in time? What should we be doing with ourselves? Is there something else that we can be adding to our spiritual lives to make us function in a better, in a more aligned manner? And this is God calling to each of us. "Ayeka, where are you?" That was one really particularly a story that I enjoyed from that. What strikes me as very interesting is that the Alter Rebbe realized that the reason why he was put into prison in this physical world was because something was happening in the spiritual worlds. And I find this concept so fascinating. He realized that in the spiritual worlds, he was trying to teach, and we see in the book of Tanya, there's a lot of esoterical, mystical, deep concepts about God, about the spiritual world, about different things that were always until then very hidden, Kabbalistic secrets about creation. And the whole Chabad philosophy takes that whole Kabbalistic doctrine and it makes it palatable. It makes it something that's down to earth, that we can understand and that we could appreciate. I mean, obviously you have to work hard and you really have to try to understand it. But if you really put your mind to it, it's bringing the godly wisdom and godly anatomy of creation, like the anatomy of the spiritual world, and it's putting it into words that if you really delve into it and try to understand it, you can understand it. It takes the soul, it takes the person, and actually gives words to it. It's kind of like taking something like an abstract topic like physics and actually giving it, definition, and this is how you learn it. Kind of like physics for dummies, right? Obviously it's not, in fact, but it's very hard to learn what we're talking about, but it gives you the ability to actually learn it. It's the first time that it was made so accessible to everyone at once. See, this knowledge was always passed down. The knowledge of Kabbalah is something that was given to us at Mount Sinai, but it was passed down from teacher to student, very select individuals. Only people who were very big mystics or very holy individuals would sit and study the secret aspect of Torah. But the average person couldn't just learn it, couldn't just open a book to understand it, couldn't just sit at this class and say, oh, let's understand the soul, let's understand the different spiritual worlds, let's try to understand where we fit into this all. And the Alter Rebbe made it accessible in an intellectual way, bringing it down into more bite-sized pieces. Of course, these bite-sized pieces are not like bite-sized. They're like, you have to really delve into it to really understand it. And you could take that and break it down, but it finally made it accessible to the average person. And the Alter Rebbe understood that in the heavenly worlds, there was what we call a kitrug, which is adversary against us. There was this discussion. Maybe this is not appropriate to take such lofty concepts, such spiritually lofty secrets of the Torah, the anatomy of creation, the anatomy of God, the anatomy of the spiritual world, and actually explain it to regular people. Maybe only a select few individuals should actually be studying it. And it shouldn't be brought down into this knowledge base that could be deciphered and studied if you really apply yourself to regular human beings, to regular individuals. And this is why the Alter Rebbe was put into prison on the physical sphere. So on a simple level, he was put into jail because people reported him, and the Tsar thought that he was going against him and inciting, activities against the Tsar. But on a spiritual plane, the reason why this actually happened is because in the spiritual spheres, there was a discussion. Should this knowledge actually be accessible to regular human beings, not just the holy select individuals? Is it appropriate to take that holy body of knowledge, body of wisdom, and actually translate it on such a low level? And the example given is of a king who sends his son to a very faraway land. And he sends his son to this faraway land in order to gain wisdom there in these faraway lands. But what happens is the son is gone for a long time, and the son strays, he becomes lost, and eventually the son falls sick, and he becomes very, very sick. And word gets back to the palace that the king's son is sick in this land. And he's so sick, and what are we going to do to help him? And he's falling worse and worse and worse into this sickness. The doctors come to the king and they say, we've looked at it, and there's only one way that this prince is going to be able to be healed. But it's not such good news. You see, on the king's crown, the crown jewel of the king's crown, there's this special, beautiful gem. And this is what made the king's crown so gorgeous. And if we take that stone that's on the king's crown and we grind it so finely and mix it with water, and we give it to the prince, is there a chance that the prince will actually be healed? And they weren't sure if the king would say, okay, take this jewel from my crown and do it. But of course the king said, this is my son. Of course, take it and do with it what you want. But by the time they got this answer from the king, the prince was already unconscious. And at that stage, his mouth was even closed. You couldn't even put it in his mouth. And the king nevertheless said, nevertheless, pry open his mouth, try to get even a little bit in. Maybe there's a chance that it will help him. So of course take my stone and of course grind it, even if there's only a tiny bit of a chance that it will actually penetrate. And the example given, this is given as an example for God's view about the teachings of Chassidus. He's saying, if this is going to help my children are everything to me. The king's prince is everything to him. If these teachings are going to inspire, if these teachings are going to awaken the Jewish soul of my children, of course take this beautiful gem, this precious... I'm sorry, I don't think this was on, but now it's on. Of course you should take this gem and feed it to my son, even on the slight chance that some of it will penetrate and he will get better. So this is what God is saying. Of course these teachings are so precious, and of course they're so holy, and of course people might read these teachings and might not even understand them properly and think they'll understand such high godly spheres, the anatomy of the world, the anatomy of the soul, the anatomy of the spiritual world, and they might think they understand them and they don't understand it, and they think that they got it, and it might be squandered for nothing. But if there's a chance that this is going to inspire my children and awaken them and bring them closer to God, of course, this is what needs to be done. So this is what the Alter Rebbe really understood was the meaning of him being put into prison, that in the godly sphere there was this discussion. Should we allow him to? Maybe this isn't right. Maybe it's not correct. It's just like it says when the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, the angels came and the angel said to Moses, how is it you're going to take this teaching and this spiritual teaching? Because there's many layers to Torah. When we talk about tefillin, it's not only just wrapping tefillin on a spiritual level, there's concepts of what it means. How is it that you can take the tefillin or you can take the mitzvot of the Torah and give it to this physical being, this lowly physical being? Give it to us, as angels who are so holy. Give it to us to do. Why are you giving it to physical human beings? And Moshe answers, no, that the whole point of Torah is for physical beings to do it, that we do it with physical reality, that here on the lowest plane of reality, we take reality and we use it for a spiritual purpose. And in the same way, now on Yud Tes Kislev, there was this controversy about whether or not you can actually take these teachings and teach it to regular human beings. And the Alter Rebbe understood that when he was released from prison, he was exonerated. It meant that in heaven, it was decided that these teachings should be taught to regular human beings. If it's going to help any individual, any soul get closer to God, then it's worth it, just like that crown jewel is worth it to use. And these teachings were, and after he was released from prison, he actually went out and taught all the more so. He spread Chassidus, he spread the teachings of Chassidic philosophy so much further and so much more. And this is what we're celebrating on the 19th of Kislev, that these teachings are told and they're taught, and that not only celebrating it, but trying to really understand these teachings and try to make it a part of our lives. And of course, one of the central teachings of Chassidus is that every single person is a chelek Elokah mimal mamish. Every single person is an actual part of God. And this is like a wow, and again, you can understand how this could be so misunderstood, but this is something that is so, when we think about this, that we are an actual part of God, that this is who God, this part of God is inside of us. And the abilities that gives us, the power it gives us, the empowerment that it gives to us is really, really incredible in the way that we look at ourselves, as well as in the way that we look at others, that we can look at other people around us as actual souls, actual beautiful souls. And this also is the way that we can look at ourselves in relation to God. And the way that we look at ourselves should not be, oh, I've done this bad, and oh, I've done this bad, because that part of us, that's a part of God, is a part that can never, ever be soiled. It can ever be ruined. It can never be messed up. It's that pure, pristine part of us that is always so holy. And this thought alone, this is just one of the ideas of Hasidic ideology, but that idea alone could so invigorate us when we think about this, that we are an actual part of God, that at our essence, we are pure, we are pristine, we are completely good. We need to define ourselves as good. It's something that can really enliven us, really bring us back to life. So this is one of the ideas of Hasidic philosophy, and we can say now a l'chaim on that concept.
Alcohol.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't drink.
Yeah, I'm going to just turn this off while we all do our l'chaims, right?